I have the privilege and the honor of hosting another virtual town hall. Again, my name is Dr. Shirley Clanton, and U-Turn Youth Consulting is a training and education firm that really unmasks the backstories that lead to urban youth violence in our community, specifically gun violence. So today I have the privilege of hosting some of the most fabulous young people, and we're going to really talk about what gun violence looks like in the community, in their communities, and not just talking about the problem, but what they have done to address the problem and some of their solutions. So I'm first going to start with their program director. I really want to introduce to you Ms. Diana Santangelo. Welcome, Diana, to the team. Welcome to this virtual town hall. And then I'm going to ask everybody to go around and kind of introduce themselves, who you are, what you do. And we just had this conversation, so this should be pretty easy. Um, we really want to welcome you for an evening of great chill, great fun, but a great conversation around such a disheartening reality that we're living right now during COVID-19. So, Diana, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, everyone. Like my friend Shirley said, my name is Diana Santangelo. I am the Director of Education at United Way. I also am very, very lucky to be able to oversee the Youth Institute program, where you see all of these people on the call are such rock stars. This is a cohort of about 20 youth, and they were selected by their teachers or other community members for their leadership skills. And they do really, really impressive work. And we're together throughout the year. And I can't wait for them to talk more about the project. I also work with Shirley in Together for Children, which is a countywide youth violence prevention effort. And actually, my research is also in youth violence and the classroom experience. I was a teacher for most of my life, up until about 4 or 5 years ago. And my interest is really in understanding how we can listen to youth better, not be the ones to make all of the decisions and make all of the policies. And so my work was to create a tool so that youth can tell us how they want teachers and administrators to be able to support them. So I'm honored to be here, and I can't wait to hear what all these rock stars have to share with us tonight.
Thank you for being here. I also want to congratulate you on your PhD, ma'am. It is a pleasure, the work that we do together in the community. I was introduced to this amazing group of rock star actually because of Diana, but we'll get into that a little bit later, and how I met these young people. So let me start with Genty. Genty, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you, Shirley, for this. I am the programs assistant for U-Turn Youth, and I am currently a senior about to graduate from FIU, and currently working with Breakthrough Miami teaching 5th grade math. And I'm really excited to be on this call with you to talk about this really pressing issue within our community.
Thank you, Genty. Rosalind, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Of course. I'm Rosaline. I'm a graduate from Miami Lakes Tech, and I'm a current aspiring freshman at Howard University. I hope to major in biology and also double major in psychology as well. I'm currently planning to be either a psychiatrist, pediatrician, or clinical psychologist. But I know that any career that I take, that I want to focus on child development and education equity. So I'm really excited to be a part of this all, and thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, yes. Andrew?
Hello, my name is Andrew. I currently go to AMI Kids Dade South, which is a program slash high school where we also earn certificates such as scuba diving and construction certificates so we could put ourselves into the workplace. And I am currently aspiring to go to college so I could join the military as an officer. And thank you.
Good stuff. Elise?
Hi everyone, my name is Elise Thomas. I'm a rising high school senior at the School for Advanced Studies Wolfson, and I'm really passionate about government and public policy and social justice and activism. I also write poetry, so I've been doing a lot of that this summer. And thank you so much, Dr. Planton, for having me on the call.
Thank you, Elise. We've spoken via email, so it's great to finally meet you. And Ms. Jamie Carter, who's not a guest to U-Turn. Jamie?
Hi. My name is Jamie Carter. I currently go to Miami Carroll City Senior High School. I'm an upcoming junior this year, and I just love giving back to the community any way I can. And I love helping people develop themselves. So hopefully I see a future in social work. And thank you for this platform.
Thank you. You guys are true rock stars. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am super excited to have this conversation with you, albeit I'm not excited about the conversation, right? So we realized that through as a result of COVID-19, it has really changed the world. It's changed everything from the way we go to school, the things we do, the way we go to work. But in the middle of this pandemic came the rise of social justice pandemic, right? So there was a lot of march as a result of the whole George Floyd, really a demand for social justice. But while this is going on, there's another pandemic brewing in the United States. And that is the pandemic of gun violence that has really kind of taken over the US. I know we have cities ranging from, I can tell you right now, we have cities from Chicago, New York, Atlanta, DC, Philadelphia, Denver, Milwaukee, Kansas. I mean, there are cities all over this country right now seeing an increase in gun violence. And I think the thing that really caught my attention and why I really wanted to have this conversation around COVID-19 is because we are all so focused on the health impact, we're not realizing the other impacts that this virus is having. So I think the first thing I want to ask before we dive into this conversation is how many people here have either been a victim of, and when I say a victim, you either know someone who's been shot, someone who's died of gun violence, or that have just been in the midst where you know of gun violence in your community. If you can just, by a show of hands, I know I can definitely raise my hand. So for anybody who's watching right now, this is clear to you that none of us are, we're not newbies to this conversation. Either we do the work or we've experienced it firsthand. And I just want to go through a little bit of statistics just to kind of put the conversation in context. Research tells us that more than 3,000 young children and teens are shot annually, right? Shot and killed. Research also tells us that Black and Hispanic children are in particular 14 times more likely than their white counterparts to die of gun violence. Research also tells us that most likely the communities that suffer most from gun violence are Black and Hispanic children and teens. So over the 4th of July weekend, it was clear to us that we lost so many young people. You got Micaiah James that died at 3. You have, I think in one weekend, we lost, if not shot or died, teens and toddlers, children who lost their lives or were taken to the hospital and are in critical condition. And the problem becomes, as we're all in the streets and we're demanding for social justice, we also need to be looking at what are we doing about gun violence and how is gun violence truly impacting our communities. So Rosaline, I'd like to ask you, what's your perception? What do you think about when you hear that Black teens and Black children and teen in particular are 14 times more likely than their white counterparts to die of gun homicide? What do you think about that, and what's your thoughts, specifically having gone through this program?
Well, as a Black teen, obviously hearing that statistic is very, very sad to me, because I know that people that look just like me are experiencing this every day. And although that particularly I may not have experienced it personally myself, gun violence in that case, that even then, it still pains me to hear that, again, some people like me are experiencing this. And so, which is why I think that what we did at my group, what we did is really important, because I feel like that there's so many reasons why young people or Black teens experience gun violence. We can talk about systemic racism. We can talk about all the different things that I think makes kids experience this or even go down that path, sadly. So that being the case, I feel like the website that we created to help kids who sadly in their community they may be tempted to go down this path. I think it's really important because our website makes it so that these kids don't have to resort to those measures. They don't have to resort to picking up a gun to fend for themselves or for their families. They can find other ways to create their, they can find other ways to work, to express themselves, to do something, so they won't have to resort to that. They won't have to resort to gun violence or anything of that nature.
Thank you. So, Andrew, I want to come to you because part of the numbers are staggering to me, right? Like Chicago had 4 toddlers shot. We had one young lady on the west side of Chicago, 13-year-old. I had an 8-year-old. I have an 11-year-old in DC. I have a 1-year-old. Like, it's all over, and we're asking ourselves, where, as a young man, and the statistic also tells us that it just tends to seem that more young men die of gun violence. When you hear that, what does it speak to you?
It really pains me because also very recently I had a friend taken away from me due to gun violence last month actually.
Wow.
So, and like from the people that I know that it's a very active thing and people tend to downplay gun violence due to statistics because only 61 people die a year to gun violence in this city. But what people don't realize is that a lot of people know these people and it hurts everyone and their families and even their friends. And it's very scary to me knowing that that could happen to me.
Wow, that's such a great point. Part of what we're hearing that a lot of people are saying, well, the reason for the upticks, Elise, is because, you know, we've got naturally in the middle of the summer, students are out of school. There's usually a summer uptick, right, when it comes to gun violence. But people are also saying, well, one of the other reasons why there's an uptick is the coronavirus pandemic, is the national social unrest, and they're saying parks are closed, beaches are closed. So, hey, everybody's on the street and they're looking to get into trouble. But can you talk to me about the role that you think social media plays in this whole gun violence epidemic?
I think that's oh, I'm sorry.
Wait, was I supposed to go?
No, that was for Elise. I'm coming back to you.
My bad.
No worries.
My bad.
I think that social media has played a very influential role in, you know, broadcasting a lot of the videos of police brutalizing Black bodies. And I think at times, as a Black person, it's really hard to, you know, watch these videos and only see people hear about gun violence and youth gun violence when you see the brutalization of Black bodies. And I think with the murder of George Floyd, gun violence more than ever has been a huge topic of discussion within our community, and also police brutality and how that contributes to youth gun violence. And I think that social media has been, although very informational and, you know, helping a lot of people be aware of these problems, I think it's also very, you know, stressful and harmful for a lot of Black youth that have to, you know, witness other people that look just like them be hurt.
Great answer. So, Jamie, when you talk, because we had you on for Wear Orange Day, right, which is part of June National Gun Violence Awareness Month. And one of the conversations, part of the conversation that you had with Jency, with some of the reasons, and you said something that kind of stayed with us, is we're blaming a lot of other people, but we need to start looking at ourselves as a community. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I feel like within our community, we broadcast it as if it's something that's good. You know, like when you look at music videos and things of that, you see gang culture and you think it's okay because of how it is broadcasted. So I think within our community, we tend to let it slide because it has become a part of our culture, and we think it's okay because we see that it is so common. So that is also, and also being stereotyped is also like, we have to fit a mold when we don't have to continue to play into that stereotype of gun culture. So
thank you. Jency, so you're in the classroom right now with 5th graders, right? In addition to the work that you do with U-Turn and all of the trainings, and you're kind of one of the leads for the teen chats that we host and revamping that program. So my question to you is, in 5th graders, what are you already seeing? What are some of the perceptions as it relates to violence that's becoming? I mean, it seems as though we're starting earlier. Our kids are being exposed to it a lot earlier. So what are you seeing in the classroom? I know even though it's only for the summer, but there's a perspective that you're already seeing. I believe that.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that something I'm seeing a lot is the video games that they partake in. There was, I don't want to call them out, but there was one day where all of our boys in fifth grade just happened to skip our second block, and we were really confused on why. We didn't know, but it was a trend. It was literally all of the boys, and then the next day we found out that there was a Fortnite event, and so we were like, oh, okay, that's what happened. And Fortnite, like, that game is very, very, like, what's the word? Like, it's too real, if it makes sense. Like, it's too real, and it's too much for a 9, 10, 11-year-old to be seeing and to be playing and to be addicted to, and then to, like, skip out on school and to, like, have your friends have that as the main topic that you want to talk about. Like, that's very concerning to me, seeing them as, like, they are that young. But then it makes me think, okay, if they're that young and they're already getting addicted to it, like, what makes it go away later on in life? Nothing, unless somebody brings it up and they say, hey, maybe there is another side to that story that you really need to look at, because the game is not necessarily just a game, because it came from somewhere. The idea of the game came from somewhere, and I wish we could have more of these conversations. But then again, to them, they kind of just see it as a video game, when in reality it might not be.
So you raise a good point. I think between you and Jamie, so we talked about social media, we talked about the culture of violence, whether it be music, video, the music video, the video game. So a lot of this, and this question is for Diana, so a lot of this is what I'm bringing into these spaces when we're doing these trainings, right? Is really trying to bring what's happening in the world of our children into the educators, into the police officers, so that now there is a catalyst and there's at least an understanding of what's happening. Mm-hmm. Since you are an educator at heart, you're the daughter of an educator, when you listen to all of the comments that's being said, how do you think our children, our culture, the things that they're exposed to? I can tell you Fortnite, GTA, I talk about them on a regular, because a lot of parents and educators don't realize the impact, right? In fact, in my book, The Backstory, we even talk about e-reality. And I think Jency hit it on the head. These kids are living in a reality that they can't tell the difference between the virtual world and what's really happening, because that mindset is there. So how do you think that impacts the classroom and what's being seen in the classroom?
So I think there's a lot of different layers, and I can only speak to my personal experience. I think as a teacher, for example, I had one student who was a bit of a problem student. And it was very hard to be patient with him. And it took 6 months until I found out that the school was very hush-hush about it. His brother was actually killed. And so as a teacher, part of the trainings that we need to have, and it's not just strictly to gun violence, but, food insecurity, so many different stressors that children can have in their lives, is we need to be trained better. We need to be constantly reminded that though our job can be stressful, when you're leading 200 students typically, but we always have to remember there's another world outside of the classroom, and we have to be really sensitive to those things. So sometimes if a student is acting up, that might just simply be because something that went on in their home the night before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one of the things, it seems as Diana's probably froze on us, one of the things that I often like to say is, particularly the educators, right? Many of our children tend to face so much before they ever step foot into the school building, right? And we need to be cognizant of that. We need to at least try to understand those backstories, as I like to call them, the stressors, root causes, whatever terminology people want to add. So Rosalind, I know you said you're going to Howard, and you want to go into either child psychology or something that has to do with understanding. What do you think when a kid picks up a gun, from your perspective as a Black teen who wants to study this, what do you think is happening in the mindset? What do you think they're going through that allows them to go that far?
Well, there's so many things that can possibly be happening in their household. Maybe they don't feel safe, so they feel like, oh, maybe a gun is the way for me to protect myself, or they may be going through something that may cause them to go through depression, and maybe they want to use the gun as a way out of that. a child picking up a gun. We have heard so many stories about little kids picking up a gun and something terrible happening after that. And it's so disheartening. We can talk about gun laws and gun safety and all that, where you should put your guns and everything, but I can't. I don't. Wouldn't want a child to see a gun used so easily. So I'm kind of getting really nervous. But what I want to say is that we need to change our gun culture. The United States, we have a very apparent gun culture, very apparent than other countries. We take our guns everywhere. It's a very common thing to see, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing for us to be doing, for our guns to be so apparent in our lives, so easily accessible, so such a commonplace thing, because guns are, at the end of the day, deadly weapons. 1 second someone can be here, the next second they can be gone, if a gun is involved. So I do think that, again, we should really evaluate our gun culture in the United States, because a gun and a child, those things should not mix at all.
Very well said. So that'll lead me into my question directly for Andrew. Is it that we just don't see guns as a deadly weapon, right? Is it just, it's a cool thing, it makes me cool, it gives me street cred, or, it gains me respect if I'm carrying the gun? What is it about the gun that you think your generation, or young men specifically, since that seems to be the trend in the research, what is it that you think they're missing? Is it that they can't make the correlation that guns kill, or the person holding the gun kill? I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think the correlation is that's not being made.
From my personal experience, I think it really just depends on the person, because from people that I know and things that I know that have happened, there's some kids that just pick up a gun just to think they're cool and to get popular, like you said, to get cool points and to be surrounded by all the popular kids. But then there's also other kids out here that are really suffering, and they've been experiencing like violence ever since like a very little kid, probably like 11 years old. And then they've always been surrounded by this environment where it's just gangs everywhere, people, I don't want to be too vulgar, but people dying everywhere, like every year, someone that was killed by gun violence. So some kids really feel like they need a gun for protection, because they know that there's actually people out there looking for them. And they just feel like they just need to protect themselves. But at the end of the day, it really depends on the person.
Well said. So Jamie, let me ask you, and I think Andrew just led us into the next one, right? So a lot of that gun culture that we're talking about, right? Where do you think it came from? Because I think you referenced it when we were talking about the music, when we're talking about the videos. Where do you think this gun culture, this love of this gun culture that teens have, that they feel guns make them all that, for lack of better terms?
Wow. Wow. Honestly, I really don't know. I mean, I guess when it gives you that, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think, like you said, media, it portrays it as being something good, but amongst teens, I feel like when they get involved into the streets, when they get involved into the streets and gangs and things of that, I feel like they just feel empowered or whatever. When it comes to guns, I can't tell you where I don't know. That's a great question.
But I think you answered it. So yeah. I'm going to go to Elise, and I think you helped me answer when you said the gang part. So now my question then becomes, because we know that gang members are not the only ones doing the shootings, right? And we know that victims are not just gang members, so innocent kids are dying. Like, we're looking at, I mean, if I tell you the stack of articles that I've read, and I'm looking at kids from 1-year-old, you got an 8-year-old that was in a car with her mom. You know what I'm saying? So there are innocent kids dying. So clearly it's not just the guns. What else would you add, Elise, to Jamie's answer?
I definitely think this culture around guns is also generational, and how, we see guns so normalized within our families at times, where someone may have a gun in our household and we don't really look at a gun as something that's a weapon. We just see it as a normal part of our family's life, for example. And I think that, also across the media and in music, where we hear, for example, a rapper talking about guns and things like that, when we consume all this media, we just become so desensitized to violence. And when, like, the culture and upbringing that we have, every person is different. And I think that guns contribute in all ways to different parts of our lives.
So I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, Elise, because when you said, when we're watching so much of this, so kids have been home, well, all of us have been home since March at this point, right? So that means all you're looking at is your phone. You're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on everything else. You're looking at the music videos. How do you think this pandemic, the fact that we're spending so much time at home on these devices, how do you think it is perpetuating the gun violence?
I definitely think it's showing us more of this violence. Like I mentioned before, we are continuously consuming media where people are dying. There have been videos on Facebook and Facebook Live where shooters are coming into places and killing people. And I think that with the more media, it's very easy to fall into this rabbit hole where violence is all you see. And it's very hard to find help out of this rabbit hole. And I feel that at times, especially being at home, it's very hard for youth and Black youth to really find mental health resources to help them through this difficult time period.
Thank you. So you led me exactly where I want. Y'all making this so easy for me. You led me exactly where I wanted to go. So Jincy, Elise talked about mental health, and we know that in certain communities, predominantly, especially our teens, just that whole concept of mental health is like, ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm not crazy. And then there's the stigma that comes with the association to mental health, right? So you have students that have learning disabilities that even if they have them, they don't want their friends to know. I can tell you, I had a gang that in order to join the gang, you actually had to have a learning disability because they felt that this was their comfort zone. This is how they belong. So I guess my question to you is, going into PR and dealing with the different worlds that you deal with, right? What is your take on the perception of mental health? Because I know you have a younger sister as well, Amy, who's volunteered with us. What is your take on young people and mental health?
That we're getting into an era where a lot of us are being exposed to talking about our mental health is okay, but I think it's still not reaching enough people, because a lot of people still believe, well, you might think it's okay, but for me, I don't think it's okay. I'm fine. I don't want to talk about it. I'll get over it tomorrow. Like, it's totally fine. And I think it's because people come online and they portray this false image that everything's fine. So you could probably have a headline about a celebrity having a meltdown on like one magazine in the store, but then their Instagram, they're having the time of their lives. They're probably out on vacation, and you have no clue that if you wouldn't have seen that headline, you wouldn't know that they're going through a tough time. And there's a lot of people in our community that are feeling very empowered to talk more about what they feel when they go through like mental health issues. And it starts to relate to a lot of people, like, oh, I didn't know that meant that I was having a mental health issue. Like, I have a friend who recently started to feel a little bit more nervous on the daily, and he didn't know what it was. And I was like, you might have anxiety. Anxiety isn't just having an anxious issue, like a panic attack. It's small things that could just trigger you daily. And I think that a big part of this is just being misinformed on what it could mean to have like something that could be triggering your mental health, especially being home all day.
Good. So Diane, it takes me to my next point. So now you're dealing, because I know you're the director of education at the United Way, and we definitely want to give a special shout out to the United Way for partnering with us on this forum tonight, who saw value in the work that we're doing and really wanting to expose our young people. How do we get the message? Because I think Jincy raised a valid point that a lot of times it's the smaller things, right? I know a lot of the young people that I dealt with that was really a hairline away from picking up a gun and doing something that would change the rest of their lives was absolutely having a breakdown, right? They just had too much on their shoulders. They might have lost a friend. They may have lost a family member. There's just so much on their shoulder, or they're the teen and now they had to become the adult to help out. And, you know, they don't know how to cope with what's happening. And for them, this was their way out. So how do we as adults who may be watching, who may be providers, who may be educators, how do we promote understanding what young people may be going through, but yet still understanding that this youth violence and the gun violence is a culture, right? It's a reality in their world that oftentimes intersects with mental health.
You know, it's so interesting that you guys are talking about this. Tequila, who's another Youth Institute fellow, she also sits on the youth committee. And last night we had a meeting and they all felt that mental health was one of the biggest concerns that they have. And that's really what they're addressing. And they had a lot of really interesting things to say. And I think one of the things that I really agree with, and I'm seeing changes like you were mentioning, Jency, is removing that stigma. I think that's half the battle. I know, and we were talking last night, I said, gosh, when I was young, you were crazy if you went to therapy. Right. That's what we thought. And I think there's a beautiful change that's happening. People are becoming more open. I shared my own story that I would have never, ever approached therapy until I had a friend who said, look, you're fit, you run, you work out, you eat healthy. What's wrong with you? Why don't you care about your mental health? Everybody should be going to therapy. And it's people like that who start talking and removing that stigma. So that was one part of it. The other part was having that access, you know, having that equity in being able to access mental health. Right. Because I was open with them as well and said, look, I sought it after a really rough divorce that I went through 5 years ago and I couldn't afford it. I was a teacher, I lived paycheck to paycheck and I couldn't afford it. So we had a whole conversation. They were all very well aware that sometimes it just takes money and it can be difficult to know where you can get that free support and is it high quality. So it's really neat that we're talking about this because this is something that youth, which is exciting, are trying to address. How do we make sure that everyone knows those resources? Are there pamphlets? Are there stickers in bathrooms at school? Are there websites that everybody needs to know and push out? So how do you make sure that everyone has that knowledge? I think is a big piece of the puzzle.
And I think to add to that, I think our young people deal with I see you, Jen. I think our young people deal with everything from food insecurity, housing insecurity, right? They've lost a loved one. They don't know where they're going to sleep. They don't know what their tomorrow is. I'll never forget, one of my youth said to me, the SP, as they call me, he's like, we're not living, we're just trying to survive out here, right? Because in their mind, you know, teachers and providers, we have this perspective where the very first question we want to ask young people is, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And this young man said to me, man, SP, you asked me 5 years. I'm worried about tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to live to see tomorrow because in his word, people from my hood don't live to see 17 and 18, right? So that's part of that culture. That's it definitely having an effect because now it's a generation that's afraid to dream. It's a generation who's afraid to have aspirations and hope. So part of equity for me, especially when I'm having these conversations, is really having folks understand that equity is about giving folks a path, right? From hope to actual change. We have a lot of our kids, and I'm grateful for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, that just don't have home. So that's why I'm always saying that the word home is a fully loaded word. So I guess my question then becomes, if we understand half of what we're talking about, right? Then why isn't it that our kids are turning to conflict resolution first? Why is it the first thing that we're turning to is the gun? And I'm going to have you, Rosaline, think about that a little bit while I answer Jency's comment. Jency?
I was going to touch upon the equity piece about having access to all these mental health resources. I was not exposed to all of these resources that are possible until I got to college. So I began FIU in 2017, and I'm lucky enough that my university, they offer that on campus. They word it in a way where it's not scary. Literally, like all of the pamphlets, all of the flyers, they always say, if you just need to talk to someone, if you just need to rant, and maybe you don't need advice, maybe you just need to let it all out. Yeah, maybe that's all you need. And I thought that was really interesting to see because I never had that before. Like I never had my school promoting, oh, if you just need to talk. Like that's really what I feel like therapy is, like really just letting out your emotions. But when I look online, like that's not what's portrayed at all.
And I think when we talk about therapy, we also need to be mindful that different communities and cultures see therapy and mental health very different, right? Some communities, and then you've got to add, like, it's an onion that just continues to get peeled, right? The many layers, because now you've got to talk about religion, you got to talk about culture, you got to talk about parents' understanding, right? If your parents come from someplace else, Jency, your understanding of what mental health is, and your parents who come from a different country, it may be different. My parents, who may be religious in a different manner, may feel the only mental health I need is to pray and go to the service in the morning and be at what they call Cri de Minuit on Friday nights and screaming until midnight and praying. And I respect that, but we also need to understand that a lot of these same young people that are picking up the guns, it's not that they weren't exposed to these things. So evidently there's a need for something more. So I definitely agree. So Rosalyn, I'm asking, my question to you is, understanding half of what we're talking about right now, right? And I know you guys did a deep dive in this, the whole background to gun violence, and we're gonna get into the fellowship in a bit. Why do you think it's so much harder for us to go to conflict resolution, right? Like, let me try to, and we're always saying this word when it comes to cops, why can't we de-escalate with one another?
Well, I also want to point out to like the mental health topic we just talked about, the stigma, because especially in the Black community, and especially where my family's from, my family's Nigerian, it's sometimes like depression, anxiety, all those things those are first world problems. Those are white people problems. You don't deal with that. So,
those are people with money problems.
Yeah, exactly. Those people, you don't. What we are trying to do is put food on the table, which yes, that is true. We can talk about Maslow hierarchy of needs, where food comes before mental and all such things like that. But I do think it's very important. That stigma is there and it's alive. I don't want to diagnose people, but I know people close to me that if I can just take them to a therapist, I will do that right away, because I know that they need that help. But to them, they don't think they need that help. They don't think that they suffer through anxiety or depression, even though to everybody it's really apparent. So we do need to break down that stigma, although it's degrading. It's still well and alive in the Black community and communities of color in Caribbean, African, in all those places, as well as the access. Therapy is expensive, as Miss Diana points out, and everybody has pointed out. It's not something accessible to someone who we know that the Black community, community of colors tend to be on the lower end of income. So before they have to think about how they're going to put food on the table before they can think about how they're going to get that mental health resource. So I think we need to find ways to provide resources to those families. So not only can they be able to get food on the table, but as well as to get the mental health that they need. So that being the case, like why I think that many kids go to guns as their only solution is that not only don't they have that resource, that mental health resource, but instead of having that, they have that culture of guns can solve this, guns can solve that. If that gang mentality, you just have to, like, I don't want to be vulgar, but if you have to like eliminate the competition, that kind of thing, that can solve everything. But we all know that's not the case. In fact, it just escalates instead of de-escalating that issue. So I think that we need more ability to access mental health, more ability to access mental health resources, and more workers, more social workers, more people like that have those professions more prominent in our communities. And also, I would also like for them to look like us as well, because there is a thing when you see someone that looks like you, we all know that race is not everything. Yeah, like we know that you can still relate to someone even if you're not the same race. Yes, that's true. But there is, if I'm talking to a black girl, she'll know what I'm talking about when I say that so when I'm talking about my 4C hair. If I talk to another black girl who also has that same hair, there is that amount of relatability that you can have with someone if they have the same skin tone as you. So
Well said.
yeah.
Well said. Well said. So, Elise, I'm going to ask you. Well, no, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Let me go to Jamie on this one. Jamie, why don't we de-escalate? Why is it so difficult? And then I'm going to follow up with Andrew because I want to know, is it a man thing? Is it a dude to dude thing where if I de-escalate, that makes me less of a dude? I don't know. But Jamie, why do you think we don't de-escalate in the community? Because we're asking of it from law enforcement. We're asking of it from other people. Why aren't we trying to de-escalate situations before we pick up a gun?
Like you said, like try to prove a point when that is not needed all the time. Sometimes you have to be the bigger person and just let things go, even though that is not easy, but you have to be that person. Like, trust me, I understand, like even though they may have been the aggressor, you may not have been the aggressor. So when it's hard when you're not the one who initially starts it, but trying to not get the last word or have the last action is hard. So I think that is one reason why we try not to de-escalate, but we do escalate is because we try to prove a point, like you can't push over me. Like, no, wrong person. But sometimes that's not what is needed. Sometimes what is needed is de-escalation. So I feel like proving a point is one main reason.
Thank you. So, Andrew, if you follow up Jamie's comment, I know guys, like y'all ego just, it gets big and no, I gotta have the last word. You're not gonna try me. I ain't no chump out here. What is the problem with just doing what Jamie said? Being able to de-escalate, walking away. Is it a man? Is it a masculine thing? What's happening there?
I think the two main issues with that is trust and pride. First, so let's say there's a gang war between two gangs, right? And then one gang puts the guns down. We're stopping the other gang from putting the guns down, right? Mm-hmm. Because they've had this problem like for months or years already, where they're talking down about. So let's say my friend dies, right? And then this certain group of individuals start talking bad about my friend, and then my pride feels like I have to step up for my friend that's dead, right? That's an example. And I think that's just the main issue. Like, we can't even trust each other in our own community. There's a lot of people dying, and we always feel like we have to prove a point to someone that they cannot mess with us and things like that.
Well said. So, Elise, hearing from everyone, I want you to tell me, what do you think about conflict resolution? Is it doable? Is it something that, because clearly they've been teaching conflict resolution since I've been in school. I don't know what we're getting. I don't know if folks are getting it right. Do we need to switch it up? What do you think is the best way to get conflict resolution to our young people instead of having them pick up a gun?
I think first off, we need to start investing more in our young people and funding more programs for our young people to, go out there and find their passions and be able to, live lives outside of violence. And I think that we need to create more of these open discussions and providing more resources to our youth to be able to, de-escalate and, continue to live their lives outside of violence. And can you also repeat your question one more time? Sorry.
The question was, what do we need to do different about teaching conflict resolution?
Yeah, and I think that for conflict resolution, it's no one size fits all issue. I think that we really need to look at, this rubric or curriculum that we have for conflict resolution and apply it differently to different communities and make sure that we are looking at the experiences and the opinions and what is needed from our youth and from that community so that we can create a specific plan of action and ways to de-escalate and to create these conflict resolution plans.
Perfect. So you guys, since we talked about conflict resolution, I think this is a great way to introduce the fellowship. The work that you guys have all done together as a cohort. I think this was one of the reasons I wanted to do this. I wanted to give you guys a platform to really talk about your work, because this group did not just talk about it. They joined, they learned, they spent a year working together, or however long it took you guys to go through the program as a cohort, and then you came up with a solution. So I'm going to go to Elise again, and then I'm gonna come back to Jamie. Tell me about your experience with the Institute. Why did you join? What did you learn? And then everybody's gonna kind of give me the same answer. Then we're gonna talk about your capstone project, close out.
Well, the United Way Youth Institute is a year-long fellowship program with the United Way. It's run by Diana, of course. And through this program, we get youth from all over Miami-Dade County get to come together and learn more about their communities and better their communities. And more specifically, towards the end of the year, we get to enact our service learning project, which we'll talk about later on in this forum. But throughout this program, I joined because I wanted to learn more about the issues happening in my community. And I'm really passionate about a lot of the issues that United Way covers and was teaching us. For example, equal access to education. I can see it so often in my community how there is a huge disparity between public school education, private school education, and more. So I joined the Youth Institute to learn more about my community and to join a community of other students that are interested and passionate in their about their community and about community service.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Jamie, why did you join and what did you get out of it?
So initially, when my school was telling us about it on the PSA, right, on the announcements, they were saying, like, if you want to win a free iPad and take a trip out of the country, you might want to join. I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, initially, that's what I'm like, oh, okay, that's gonna be nice. That sounds nice, you know? And then I actually applied and went through the interview process, and I made it. And it was more than that. Like, we learned so much about different people within our community, which was nice. Learning about different backgrounds and learning about the education, learning about financial, and just learning about different things that can help me in the future was really great. Yeah. So and we
yeah.
did it. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
I joined initially because what we're doing right now, I would never have done this before. And I felt like this program helped me out with my leadership skills and becoming like less shy and more vocal about my own opinion and things like that. And that's basically what I got out of the program. It helped me out personally with my leadership skills and just being more open about myself and things like that of the sort.
Good job. Rosalind?
Likewise, Andrew, like if you ask freshman year to do this, she will like not do it because I'll be so scared. Instead of now when even though I'm still scared and still nervous, I'm still putting myself out there to do it. And well, I joined because I did an internship with YWCA, and they were like, oh, hey, you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, sure. So when I was applying for it, though, I looked over the website and I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. I would love to join a program I know that later on I will help my community in some way. And so that's the main reason I joined it. And I was so happy and proud of myself when I got in. But one thing about this program that I absolutely loved and also inspired me was, like, in the beginning of the program, they showed us how their new approach to kindergarten, their new approach to young education, how instead of doing things, the orthodox way, like the way it's always been done, they're trying to make new ways of learning and new ways to help really create learning to each individual kid, which is what inspired me to be into child development and education equity. Because as Elise said, I always noticed the disparity between public education and private school education, as well as education pertaining on race as well. How maybe like white kids tend to pursue higher education than their fellow people of color, which I always wondered that. So with this program, I hope to pursue and research about that and how to end that cycle and create that equity that's so much needed, because kids of color also need seats at the table of making change in their world. So.
Well said. So, in the about 10 minutes that I have left, you guys tell me about this amazing, well, you're not going to tell me because I got the privilege of being a part. Tell me about this, tell them who's listening. And then I'm going to let Daniela really give a pitch for the program. But really, tell me about your capstone project. How did it come about? And I know COVID just really kind of messed up the plans. I had the privilege of speaking to this group back in January at an invitation, by an invitation from Diana, and I was mesmerized. I was mesmerized at their questions. I mean, these were some of the toughest questions I've gotten about gun violence and the community and what are we as adults doing and providers, and they really stole my heart. So I really want to say congratulations to you guys. So somebody has to tell me about this capstone project. Where can people find it? As a result of COVID, you guys could not have a regular graduation. I wanted to be there. I wanted to congratulate you guys for a job well done. So now who's going to tell me about the capstone? Should I go to Elise? Who's going to tell me about the capstone? Elise, because I dealt more with Elise in the preparation and the sending. Listen, don't have Elise track you down. Don't let her track you down. But go ahead, Elise. Tell us about the project.
So the Youth Institute comes together every single year to enact a service learning project in their community. And this year, our project was centered around youth gun violence and ways that we can help resolve this issue. So we created a resource website called United Arms of Tomorrow. You can find it at unitedarmsoftomorrow.com. And on this resource website, we use education as a platform that promotes youth discovering and finding their passions and helping youth find these resources to do so. So through our program, we not only talk about, through our website, we not only talk about youth gun violence, and we have videos from Dr. Planton, Director Morris Copeland, who's the director of the Juvenile Services Department in Miami-Dade County. But we also have different workshops in the arts, college and career readiness, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship, to just help young people, get out there and do things in high school, middle school, elementary school, and showing them that they can pursue their dreams and their goals, and like through this website and through seeing others do it and through finding the resources that are available to them.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to the project? Jamie, Andrew, your experience with the project? Well, go ahead, Andrew.
Me personally, all I really did was do the numbers, basically, like the prices of things. So I don't really know too much about how they built the website and all that, but I know there's a lot of good things on there, like such as scholarships, and it helps a lot of students that really don't know how to get scholarships, or they feel like they don't deserve it. But there's a lot of scholarships out there for basically anything. You could be Black, Hispanic, and you could get a scholarship just for the color of your skin. And I don't know, I just think it's a really good website that exposes a lot of things that people don't know about.
Thank you. Jamie?
Well, they both put it in together. I think it's just a really great outlet for kids, because, a lot of times we don't have a lot of ways to express ourselves. So I think this is just a great outlet for kids that do need help, because you can go there and you can chat with us. There's scholarships on there, like he said, financial resources, and just different things that kids that don't have that advantage of knowing, they can go there and use it as a source. So
thank you. Rosalind?
Well, yeah, I admire our website because it has so many resources that kids can use in regards to anything, mental health, scholarships, everything. And I know that our website was really made for, instead of kids to resort to gun violence, they can resort to other things, other passions, other like arts, writing, other things to express themselves, so they won't have to fall into that trap of gun violence.
Thank you. So as we wrap up, before I turn it over to Diana, before we officially wrap up, I really want for each of you to give a young person or an adult that may be listening. What's a word of advice that you give a young person who may be thinking about picking up a gun, who may be in a difficult situation? You can either choose to give the advice to the young person, a teenager like you, or you can give an advice to an adult who may be working with young people. I'm gonna give you guys the liberty of picking whichever one you want, but definitely I'd like you, each of you, to leave some nuggets of importance to someone who may be listening, because you may actually be the person to help someone from making a really bad decision. So let's start with Jency.
My piece of advice would be for teens and maybe even mini adults my age. I'm entering my 20s and I still feel like I learn something every day. But one thing I would say about mainly about conflict resolution is don't be afraid to have that hard conversation. I think that that's just the most important piece that gets left out of every conflict issue you might have, is sometimes this is just a miscommunication. Maybe it was just you didn't read that text message in time and that's what got you mad, and now you're resorting to the wrong thing. But if you just have the conversation with that person before resorting to something that could possibly end their life, like just talking about it might just go the long way that could solve whatever issue may be at hand.
Thank you. Jamie.
My word of advice would be for adults, because a lot of times they don't listen. And I would say that they're not always there for us when we need them, because a lot of times we don't resort in adults because we don't think that they'll listen. So I say for adults, be there for us and guide us and actually listen. So that would be my word of advice for adults.
Good one. And I'm always saying that to adults. Rosalind?
Well, I guess my advice would be to educators. I know educators are asked to do so much for our youth, and I just want to ask them to do one more thing. I want you guys to pay attention to your students a little bit more and pertaining to their mental health. Many kids may not have the ability to talk to their parents or may be too scared. So just if you find any, like if you see a student who used to be so cheery, now they're a little bit sadder than usual, or that used to do their work on time to the T, but they're not doing their homework as much as they used to, just maybe take them aside and ask them how they're feeling. Because just that question, just that, how are you, can really change someone and take them to the class.
Absolutely. I tell educators that all the time. Sometimes it just takes asking the question. Andrew.
My piece of advice would be for both youth and adults. My advice for the adults would be try to be more understanding of your children, because me personally, I know when I try to talk to my parents about things that I'm experiencing, sometimes they don't really understand and they really start making assumptions, right? And I would just really tell them to try to be more understanding of their kids or any students. You don't have to be a parent. You could be a teacher or anyone. Just try to be more understanding of the youth. And for the youth, to not be afraid to express your emotions. Because I know for boys especially, they feel like they would be, what's the word? Be called soft. If they try to be more expressive with their emotions, or try to be more trustworthy a therapist as well, because I also know a lot of my friends personally, they don't really trust therapists. They don't trust to tell them things that they've experienced and sort. So yeah, that would just be more expressive of your emotions would be my advice.
Thank you. And Elise, you get to close us out before I go to Diana.
This is for youth, but just find a way to, channel your emotions into some positive outlet. I know for me, I go to writing often to just write about whatever, and just wait. In the moment, it's not the best to react to something extremely terrible, and to use that emotion and fuel that emotion into your passion and into something that you care about, whether that's through service, STEM, the arts, whatever. Just hold that emotion and use it to do something good rather than something bad.
Thank you. Diana, you have to be absolutely proud of this cohort. You're on mute. I am extremely proud of you guys. I think you are, and you're in an amazing group, and you're only a small portion of the entire cohort. Of course, we couldn't have the whole cohort here. So Diana, I turn it over to you for any closing remarks, any suggestions you may have for an educator or a youth before we close out.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I have to echo the same thing. You guys are so impressive. And I've been on Zoom 10 hours a day and want to rip out my hair, and I could talk with you guys for hours longer.
Yes.
You don't even come across as youth. You are all so knowledgeable and you have done such great work. And the interesting thing about this program is it's a very small part of what I'm actually supposed to do in my job description, but it's the part that fulfills me the most, because to see what you guys have done, not even doing, and we've had great projects in the past, and we are so lucky to have so many fabulous youth in Miami-Dade County. But to have the longevity of thought to think, well, we're not going to do just something for one day. We're not just going to do one event. We want to pass this along. We want to keep it going. We want it to be sustainable. Like, those are things that adults struggle with. And you guys are absolutely phenomenal. And I am so proud. And Shirley mentioned that forum. Those questions that you all asked are questions that adults are scared to ask.
Yeah.
Adults are scared to put themselves in positions, in front of others of authority. And that was a rock star panel. There are a lot of really important people in the community, and you all had no fear. You had no fear at all. And I think sometimes as adults, we're scared. Well, what if my supervisor doesn't like that? Or that's not the organizational opinion. So they don't want to push, but you guys have to keep pushing, and you do. And you ask those tough questions, and you need to demand it from us as adults. And that's our job. And you're going to take our places soon. So you're going to be the ones who get to make the decisions and make the policies. And then you're going to have to be an adult and remember to listen to youth again. So I would just say that I am just so proud. And part of the beauty of this program is that it's not just something that United Way is able to offer to some really amazing youth. You guys give us so much back. I know that for me, it is incredibly important that this is a student-centered program. This is not, what does Diana think is best? What does Diana think we should be doing? We really believe in offering you guys the opportunity to steer your program. The challenge is yours. The project is yours. You own this program. And us as adults and my team, we get to understand what the community challenges are, because we always like to say what they are, and we'll, point to data, and we'll, map and meet with partners. But for us, we get to learn so much from you all. So we benefit just as much as you all are able to benefit from this program. So all I can say is pass on the love. Exposure is so important. You guys talked about a little bit about that, and in your project, just making sure that people are aware of other careers and other opportunities. And that's something that I've learned in my position and speaking with so many youth across the county. Sometimes we forget, and it's very hard to see that there is a world outside of our community. There are other places to go and other things to do, and it's just temporary, and you get to pick what you want out of life, and you got to fight for that. And it's easier said than done, and sometimes we don't see the world outside of our community. So it's our job, people like me and Shirley and her whole team, it's our job to support you, to expose you to other things, and to do whatever we can to eliminate barriers that society has placed in front of you. So I will stop talking because I'm sure everyone's hungry, but I do want to throw out that we actually have the application that's releasing this week for the next cohort. So if anyone listening is interested in being part of this program, it's a completely free program. And yes, Jamie is right. You do get an iPad out of it. Unfortunately, this year we'll be doing domestic travel. We'll be going to Washington, D.C. So we'll get a little bit more of that public policy piece, which is where real change can happen when you do make those changes to policy. So feel free, if you would like to sign up, you can just go to United Way Miami, or you can email me directly at santangelod@unitedwaymiami.org. And we would love to have you if you're interested in service and leadership and you're a high school student in Miami-Dade County. This is your show, this is your program, and we would love to have you apply for next year.
Thank you. I know we're out of town before my producer starts to send me the text. I want to say I am extremely proud of each and every one of you. It was on behalf of U-Turn, it was our pleasure and privilege to have you all on. A couple of words. You guys did not let COVID make you. In fact, you decided what you wanted to do. And that is truly humbling. The other thing that I want to tell you, we lost a giant in Congressman John Lewis, and there was something that he liked to say, which was to continue to fight for what is unjust, continue to fight for what is right, but more importantly, continue to get into good trouble. So you guys are definitely on the path of doing just that. So to the people who may be watching or listening, please understand that our young people may be at some tough intersectionalities, but at the same time, we've got some amazing young people ready to pick up the baton to make some changes. It was our honor and our pleasure to host this one today. I look forward to having you. Please don't hold this to yourself. Share it, like our page. This will be on the U-Turn Youth Consulting page. It will be on our YouTube page. Definitely worth sharing with some friends to let people know there's some amazing work being done. Thank you for watching. Until we see you next time, have a good one. Good night.